subject to such qualifications and laws as are necessary for a democratic society. So that means that it was already embedded in the Constitution back in 1992. But it wasn't until 1999 that the Institute of Economic Affairs drafted the first bill seeking to promulgate the access to public information. And unfortunately, a lot of people thought that it would be passed as soon as possible because there were many institutions and individuals, and especially the media, who were asking for information about some of these institutions, but were not privy to because the law had not come into effect. It wasn't until after 2 decades that this law was actually passed. And so it was actually passed in Parliament in March 2019 as the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989. The President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, assented to it on May 21, 2019. In accordance with Section 86, it was expected to come into force at the commencement of the next financial year, and it did come into force in January 2020. And so we're going to have a conversation about that because this is not enough. Of course, you know that there's a law that allows you access to this information, but how do you go about it? And of course, the team handling the right to information have been going around sensitizing the public on what they need to do in order to get this information. In the studios this morning, I'm honored to have the Executive Secretary of the RTI Commission here with me, Yao Sapon Boateng. He's a lawyer. Good to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm well.
You're good?
I'm well.
All right. I probably may have given a bit of information, but of course, you being the Executive Secretary, you have all the details. So if a regular person comes to you or the layman comes and says that, break it down for me what you mean by RTI, what exactly is that?
Okay, so like you reiterated, it's a human right to have access to information. Information is generated for and on behalf of the people by the state and by public institutions. Therefore, institutions are only custodians of information. When an individual wants to have information, every institution is required to have an information officer and an information unit. In that unit, you process applications that come to your institutions. Every public institution is also required to have an information manual that should guide the kind of information that is held in that institution. So these are things you should expect to find if you walk into a public institution. We're going around trying to sensitize public institutions to build their capacity in terms of meeting such requests that will come from time to time. So the law allows you to have some level of information, but also restricts some information from going out. Now what it is that no public institution is exempt from the application of this law, except of course the National Archives, which actually has, and the museums, which actually give out information anyway. So apart from the ones who give it out anyway, no one is exempt, which means the Office of the President is not exempt, National Security is not exempt,
National security is not exempt, except that it's not every information
they can put out. But the fact that you are national security does not exempt you from the application of this law.
Why is that so?
Because, like I said, the information belongs to the people, and that's what the Constitution recognizes, and that's what this law also recognizes.
But if it belongs to the people, and for example, I need information from the national security, and I can't access some level of information, if it belongs to me, I should have access to it.
Okay, so I'm sure the Bible even says, yes, you are entitled to everything, but it's not everything that you are able to do. So, for instance, if there is information meant for securing the borders of this country, all right, and you have been hinted of some activity and you want that information, the attempt at giving that information out to you may affect or prejudice the plans that the security of the state or the agencies of the state have put in place. So at that time, it will not be, we cannot force the agencies to give you that information. But when that information has been utilized, you could probably come in and ask, so when we heard of this, what were you planning? At that time, it has become history. It has become public record, so you are able to get it. So for the information, it depends on the time it is to be utilized.
Depends on the time that it will be utilized.
So you can request for every information, but timing is also very critical.
How do I go about requesting then?
So you go to an information officer who is an officer of every public agency. First of all, let me add that when the law says a public institution, it includes a private organization that receives public resources and also or performs a public function.
Give me an example of such a private institution.
So
we
the question
understand.
is, TV3,
Yeah.
do you perform a public function or do you offer public services
Yeah.
or do you receive public resources?
Okay.
So there are two criteria for checking whether or not an institution can be deemed a public institution. First, whether it offers a public service or does it receive public resources.
I see.
Either of the two qualifies you to become a public institution.
So if we brought up TV3, I might as well just chip in. So you remember when COVID came and we're told that there would be some media institutions that will receive some funding. Just in case, I can't say for a fact if TV3 received, but just in case TV3 received some funding, COVID support, does it mean that based on that, you can qualify as you know, a private institution offering a public service or receiving public funds, and so we have to give out information?
So for the fact that you are offering public services, you would have to give out information.
I see.
Because you're offering public service. If you choose to offer services to yourselves, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But the moment you open your doors to the unsuspecting public, then we should question the kind of work you do. Same way you can also question the kind of work other people offer on behalf of the state.
Does it mean I can require information from the Office of the Presidency?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes.
There are no limitations.
There are no limitations, except that if you ask for, say, a memo that is yet to be utilized by cabinet or by the president or by the vice president, then you would have to probably wait for it to have been used. Otherwise, if you take it before it is used, you prejudice the process or the deliberative process of decision making.
What do I do if I need the information?
So you go to an information officer in a public institution, you request the information you're looking for in writing. If you are not able to write, the law requires that you make your application orally. The information officer is duty-bound to reduce your request into writing and then process the request on your behalf. He has two things. He can either, under the law, refuse you that information because a portion of the law exempts or excludes that information from going out. If his reasons for excluding the information are not grounded in the law, then he has to give you that information.
I see.
So the only reason an information officer can give for excluding information is that the law does not allow that information to go out.
Not because you have to pay for them to print out
the
information.
The payment is another factor. So he may refuse the information to you, or he may grant you access to that information. If he refuses it and you are not happy about it, the law says you must appeal to the head of agency. The head of agency will look at the decision he took and then decide whether to affirm it or to allow you get that information.
I see.
All right. If you are still not excited about the decision of the head of agency, then the law says before you can go to court, you must come to the Right to Information Commission.
Okay.
To seek redress. Now, the good side of that arrangement is that it costs you nothing to come to the Right to Information Commission. You get legal services that you would have paid for in the court at the Right to Information Commission.
Is it?
Yes.
Because I remember Manasseh, you know, had requested for some information from one of the public institutions. They had told him that you have to pay for it to be printed or so. So did he eventually then come to the RTI?
I think it was the fourth estate of the Media Foundation for West Africa. They came to the Right to Information Commission. We investigated it, listened to both sides, looked at the evidence they had. We disagreed with the agency that they were to pay that huge sum of money.
I see.
And then we ordered that it be paid according to what it will cost you to photocopy the information or print out the information.
So that means that you would have to pay for some of these documents?
So the law creates a fee arrangement for access to information. You only pay for the reproduction of the information. Because like I said, the information has already been paid for by the citizenry. It is held for and on our behalf. So what you pay for is the reproduction. What reproduction means in simple terms is that if I want it in a printout, then I must pay for print.
Okay.
If I want it in a photocopy, I must pay for the cost of photocopy. If it is in a language other than the language I want it in, then I must pay for the cost of translating it into that language. If it is in a form and it needs to get into another manner of form, then I must pay for that cost. So I don't necessarily pay for the information, but I pay for the cost of reproduction. That's what it simply means. So the law also imposes a duty on public institutions that, hey, you cannot make profit out of this process.
Okay.
So you must keep an account separate from your regular accounts that you use to run your organization, purposely for right to information or access to information applications. And then when you make money out of that arrangement, that money can only be used for access to information exercises. So you cannot plan as an institution or an agency of state and say, this year I'm expecting to make 2 million Ghana cedis out of access to information applications, and I'm going to use it to build, say, a research center. No, the law doesn't allow you to do that.
What happens if we request for information from an institution? They tell you that we've already made it available to another institution, so go to them. And this is the case of Togbe Afede and Metro TV.
Okay.
And of course, the state, Council of State.
Okay.
So what does the law say about that in particular?
Okay. So first of all, we encourage agencies to put out information you may have given to one applicant out anyway. So proactive disclosure of information. Okay. If I apply for information and you give it to me, it means that if B applies for it, he's also entitled to get that information. Yeah. So why wait for B? Just put out that information, say on your website or in an official publication. Now, if an individual comes to request for an information that you may have given out to another party, all right, you have no business referring that individual to that other party, because that other party has no business doing the work you are required to do.
Exactly.
You understand?
Yeah.
So basically, that's our position on it. What the law says under Section 21, which was referred to in that arrangement between Metro TV and the Council of State, was that they had published it to Metro TV, and therefore they treated Metro TV as an official publication. An official publication in terms of the law would be a report, would be maybe on your website, but not to an applicant who may have come to your organization. So I think that there must have been some misapprehension.
Yeah, because Metro TV, I mean, if you look at it on the surface, it is not a public institution.
No, in terms of applying for that information, they were not a public institution.
Exactly.
They were an applicant.
Okay.
But in terms of information that they may hold, then it is possible to treat Metro TV as a public institution.
But regardless,
for this arrangement,
they do not have the right to refer to Metro TV. That's what you're saying.
At all. I think that they should have either published the information they gave out to Metro TV and referred the aid to that publication without necessarily
or in the dailies or something.
Yes, and said, we have it here on our website, you can go have it.
How did he treat that issue?
It hasn't come to us
yet. It hasn't come
to
you.
I think there's a portion of it that has come. We are dealing with it.
Okay.
And because it's on our table, I would like not to comment.
Of course, not to touch on it. But how do you then ensure that these public institutions go by the law? Because if at every point someone requests for information, one person says, I've already given it to this institution, go for it. Another says, you have to pay for printing, so until you do that, I'm not going to give it to you. Then that means that there's really no, no way of ensuring that they all go by the law as stated.
There's an enforcement, investigation and compliance unit of the Right to Information Commission that is trained to go into public institutions and ensure compliance. So we have already put in place the measures to go out and ensure that all public institutions are compliant.
Yeah.
And then we have a monitoring side of our job that makes sure that we can probably put in applications as a commission just to test your processes and the way you even store your information. And then we are able to tell from an applicant's point of view what you are doing right or you may not be doing right.
I see.
Yeah, so we've put in place structures to test and ensure that organizations are compliant.
Does it mean that you've had to set up information offices, if I may say, in all of these institutions that may not have had one previously?
It is not the duty of the Right to Information Commission to be setting up information offices. It is the duty of each public institution to do that by themselves. That's what the law says.
Okay.
So you may put in place an information officer to man an information unit, or you may designate an existing officer as an information officer and train purposely under this law to do that arrangement. Now, what we are a regulator. We come around to ensure that you're doing the right thing. So we cannot be recruiting information officers for you and then when you are wrong, how do we
Yeah.
deal with them? So we are still in the process of sensitizing public institutions, and we'll use this platform to appeal to public agencies
Yeah.
to allow us the opportunity to engage them to appreciate what the law is about. Because there are offenses under the law.
Yeah.
And once the law is operational, it is not an excuse to say, I didn't know what the law says.
What are the offenses?
So if you're an individual in charge of access to information in your organization, and you deliberately refuse to give out information that is not excluded
Yeah.
or exempted under the law, you may fall foul of the law. If you also give out information that you ought not to give out, you also fall foul of the law.
And what happens to you?
And then you can suffer a penalty of imprisonment to up to 3 years, 6 months to 3 years, and a penalty units up to 500 penalty units for either of them. If you use false pretenses to get information of others, you know, personal information of individuals are excluded from disclosure, except with the consent of those individuals. If you use false pretenses to get that access to that information, you also fall foul of the law.
I see.
So there are so many offenses that the law itself has created, and it's important that we allow ourselves to be sensitized or trained in terms of the application of this law, so that we do not fall foul of the law.
I don't know if you have the stats, but I'm just curious as to how many of such applications you have had or you've received as an institution. How many of them have actually gone through in terms of requesting for some of these pieces of information from institutions, and yet these institutions have refused.
Yes, I think we filed our annual report, which usually is a compilation of what is happening in all the state agencies on our website, www.rtic.gov.gh. If you go in there, you'll find that about this year, last year, about over 200 institutions filed reports with us.
Okay.
Many of them received requests for access to information in our first year of implementation, which means that Ghanaians are getting excited about that arrangement and are using it gradually. In the first year of filing our report, we had just about 50.
Okay.
So it's a growth.
I see.
So I think that we should expect that more Ghanaians are going to use this within this 2022-year period, and we should see a jump.
The year has almost ended. Well, the reports won't come out.
It won't come up till June of next year.
Till
June of next year.
Okay.
So we should expect that there will be some growth.
We wait to see how that goes.
Sure.
But how are you also partnering with these state institutions to create further awareness? Because, I mean, I know it's not enough to just come and sit here and talk and go around the region. These institutions should also lead the charge and sensitize people a bit more about it.
Yeah, so for this year, we've been engaging over 14 institutions, even within Accra. Okay. Then this has been alongside our regional tours, where we also engage the regional heads of institutions across the country. We use that opportunity to educate the heads of the agencies to appreciate what the law has created. I don't think anybody is against any institution. I mean, it's what you're doing that people are only asking to know. And therefore, if you are working for the people, why should it be difficult for anybody to disclose what they do? All right? It helps to give us an inclusive government, an inclusive democracy, that everybody gets involved. And then it checks us to be transparent to the extent that you should expect that when you have done something in the normal course of your work, people will come and find out exactly how you went about it. Were you fair? You know, real questions will come up out of it. So we should expect that people will question us on what we do. And therefore, that alone should check us to do the right.
So if I'm a student, I've written exams, let's say I'm a law student, because I know that the law students have been in the news for quite a while over even the request to have their papers remarked and all of that. If I'm not too happy about my results and I want to request for information on that and get my paper back to see how I was scored, is that okay? Is that allowed per the law?
So this law student entrance exam thing, at that point, you are not even a student. Okay. You are only seeking to enter an organization. So you have not become a law student at that point. Okay. You are writing an entrance exam to assess whether or not you make it to be a student.
Yeah, but you're a law student from the institution that you studied your...
But you already got your degree, so you are not a law student at the Ghana Law School yet.
Okay.
You only become a law student after you have passed your entrance exam. Right?
Okay.
That's where the hullabaloo is all about. That's there were some instructions that when you should sign, you know.
Exactly.
Yes. Now you're not a student, but you're fighting for rights of a student. That's my opinion. It has nothing to do with the right to information.
Okay.
My advice to law students are that the law profession is a full-time course, and anybody who has attempted to do it part-time spends more time than usual. So if you want to make it as quick as possible, you should dedicate more time to the study of the law.
So I should quit my job if it's taking...
It takes you 2 years to do it. Why don't you quit and do it and get back to work?
If that job is providing...
Unfortunately, others have done it. You'd realize that those who take the exam, those who do it as a matter of full time, always make it.
Every single one of them. You have stats to back that.
Majority.
Okay.
I went through the law school too.
Yes.
Yes. But those who want to work and use 2 hours of work time to go and study at the law school, it's difficult because
but you can't blame
the
them.
load is so much. It's my
Your personal
independent
opinion,
advice. Now, it comes to whether you can get your raw score. I think the raw score is given to every student anyway, because once they tell you your grade, you know that if you scored within this range, then you had...
But it's not the raw score I'm asking for. So I'm requesting for my paper.
Your paper.
So I can assess how I was marked.
Okay.
And whether I'm satisfied with it or not.
Okay. So your paper, you have, for instance, 100,000 people writing an exam in a professional exam.
Yeah.
I would ask myself, in ACCA or ICA, do students get to have their scripts or do they get to have their score?
Okay.
In every professional exam, as I have come to know, you only get your score and your grade. You never get the opportunity to see the marked script. But there is always an opportunity for you to have it remarked.
But not for you to get the script.
I don't see any professional
So I can't
agency
activate the RTI law
to get your
to
script.
get my scripts back?
In a professional exam, I doubt. But maybe in an organization like the university, I'm sure you can be able to do that. But in a professional exam, I don't know how the ACCA, which is somewhere, which marks scripts in the UK, for instance, will be sending your scripts down to Ghana for you.
For like a BC, student or WASI, the same applies?
The last time I checked, 400,000 students wrote the BC. Imagine that we have a situation where 400,000 students are asking for all their scripts to see exactly
carry on.
how it happened. All right? We will be getting ourselves into an absurdity. It's a situation we may not be able to manage. But if the organization, if the courts thinks otherwise, why not? The court has the final say.
Yeah.
But from where we sit, I think that we must be practical in our application of the law.
This is interesting, actually. I would have thought that the RTI will allow you to at least request for your score sheet, the paper that you wrote the exam on and answer the questions so that you can at least respond. But so far, how many of these institutions or how many of these means of educating the public have you exhausted? Have you tried visiting all the regions yet, or are you going to do
so
that
far,
gradually?
we have done 10 regional tours, and we've had public fora in all the regions where we have visited. We've also been to the traditional chiefs, we've been to the regional coordinating councils, and we have tried to engage all heads of departments that you will find within the regions to appreciate what this law is about. We have about 6 outstanding regions we hope to cover by the end of the year.
By the end of the year, you'll be done with it?
Hopefully.
I mean, that's interesting, actually. That's interesting. I wish you luck with all of that. And of course, just to sensitize people again that there's a law against using false pretenses to get information about someone or an institution.
Sure.
And for an institution as well, if you deliberately refuse to release information.
When you know that the law allows you to give it out, then it's an offense.
I see. What will be your final words?
I would just appeal to Ghanaians at large that we pushed for the passing of this law. We pushed for the passing of this law, and therefore we should allow it to operate.
Yeah.
If you find yourself at the institutional level, when people make their request, be open and help to give access to information.
Okay.
All right. And then those of us at the requesting end, instead of going round the system to use some other means to get information, there's a proper law that regulates access to information.
Yeah.
Let's use the proper channel to get information. You have no business using your phones to take pictures of confidential information and sending it out.
Yeah.
Allow people who genuinely need information to go through the system.
So I'm looking at an exempt list to write information, and of course these institutions that will not necessarily have to provide you information if you request for it. We all know that the bill in 1999 was put together to fight corruption as well. So now it states here, and of course you are the executive secretary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, information from the president and the vice president we cannot get access to, information relating to cabinet, relating to law enforcement and public safety, information affecting international relations, security of the state, economic and any other interest, economic information of third parties, information relating to tax, internal working information of public institutions, parliament, privilege, fair trial, contempt of court, privileged information, disclosure of personal matters, and disclosure for the protection of public interest. Is that right?
Yeah, so like I said from the beginning, it is the information involved in this arrangement at a certain point in time that you may not have access to.
Okay.
All right. Despite all these exemptions that the law has listed, it says when the information you are requesting contains factual or statistical information, it must be given out anyway.
Okay.
That information is not exempt. So if I come to the office of the president and I say, how many memos for security issues have come to your attention? It's a factual matter.
Okay.
That's not exempt information.
But what if I want those memos? I want to take a look at them because maybe I'm investigating.
So like I said, if the memo has been utilized, then it's record.
Okay.
Then you can get that memo. But if it is yet to be utilized, then you cannot have it. So it's the matter of time. So
who determines whether it's been utilized or not? Because what if it's already been utilized, but for some reason I request for it, and the office of the presidency tells me that we are not.
So that's why there's a system for you to complain.
Okay.
You can complain at the head chief of staff's level. You can complain at the Right to Information.
You're going to complain to the chief of staff that
if it doesn't work for you, the Right to Information Commission,
to give you
the Right to Information Commission is available for you.
And you'll fight on that for us?
We have made decisions against public institutions.
Against the presidency?
Against public institutions.
I'm just asking
against
if
the
there's
state.
ever been a complaint.
Against the state.
Okay.
Yes. There are complaints against the presidency. We are still investigating.
Okay.
And if it comes that the law doesn't allow them to do it the way they have indicated, we will direct that they do it properly.
Really?
Sure.
So they will not withhold any information relating to maybe corruption allegations necessarily?
It's the information. For us, we don't put any spin on the information you put out. We only make sure the applicant gets the information. What they want to use the information for is their business.
So if the corruption is happening at the moment, currently, and we're investigating, and we're asking for documents relating to that, and you're telling us that because you have not used those details yet,
so it depends on the circumstance, like I said.
All right.
So it's not every information you have listed that is exempt. Now, there are two exceptions to this general rule of exceptions, that when the information is in the public interest, you must give out the information.
Okay.
And then when the information is, the non-disclosure of the information is more likely to cause harm to society, all right, then we must give out that information. Oh, I see. So despite the exemptions, there are two exceptions to that general rule.
I see. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Yao Sapon-Boateng Esquire, is the Executive Secretary of the Right to Information Commission, and he's been sensitizing us on the use of that law, of course, if you require information. It's been a pleasure. Afra got evicted over the weekend from Ghana's Most Beautiful, and today she sits with us to tell us what her future plans are. Keep watching. We'll be right back.